Chapter 5. Space. President Isleworth. President Isleworth waited on stage with a medal and certificate as he and 400 members of Dawn Republic's Central Committee applauded Dr. Alazand. Isleworth's best friend, Major Dondor, helped the nuclear physicist up the steps. Although young, the genius was losing control of his body because of a neurological disease. Isleworth faked a smile as the scientist reached the top and waved Major Dondor away. The president of the Communist Party shook Dr. Alazand's hand and hooped the medal over his head before taking hold of the mic. Dr. Alazand deserves this reward of excellence for his outstanding research on plutonium and the forming of materials, and for leadership in developing energy and weapons systems for the Dawn Republic. The audience applauded the Renidian scientist as he took the certificate and bowed. Isleworth held his chin up high. No longer must we rely on buying solar harvested energy from Osbox thanks to this man. He placed an arm around the frail physicist's shoulders. We are extremely lucky and grateful to have your brains in our National Academy of Engineering. A flush crept across the scientist's pale brown cheeks. After the award ceremony, President Isleworth jogged through the magnificent halls of his palace and winding stairs. He didn't break promises. He paused outside his son's heavy wooden door and listened as his dear wife read Junior Isleworth a story. When he opened the door, little footsteps padded across the thick carpet. "Daddy!" Isleworth dropped to his knees as his 8-year-old ran into his arms. The child had lost much of his puppy fat and was stretching out. His cheeks were still chubby, so the president planted a kiss on one. "Have you finished your story?" "Still a few pages to go." Loris tipped her albino curls over her shoulder. "It seems as if you're ready for bed too. Aren't you joining me for celebratory drinks?" I have a dress laid out for the occasion." Her yellow eyes creased at the corners when she smiled. He nodded his approval and led his son back to the four-poster bed. "Well, you enjoy your story and sleep soon." He tucked him in and kissed his forehead. "Love you, Daddy." "Good night, son." He headed back to the grand hall where Loris joined him in a glittering silver cocktail dress. It was hardly the usual green communist attire, but they were the elite. As President Isleworth and Loris conversed with various people of importance, he couldn't help but notice Dr. Alazand's serious mood as he huddled at a table with other scientists and engineers, conversing half-heartedly. His concentration was somewhere else, as his dark eyes focused on Isleworth. When everybody left, Alazand stayed. "What's wrong?" Isleworth asked. "Is there somewhere private we can converse?" In a much smaller room, President Isleworth offered Professor Alazand a whiskey and cigar, but he declined and sat in an armchair with a glass of water. "I visited the plutonium production facilities in Exorius on my trip to Osbox last week. I know, all was well, was it not? Dr. Melanie told me she saw no evidence that they produced a functional weapon." She was lying. He rubbed the back of his neck. "She works for them." "What?" "Agents are tailing her. She left your palace 5 minutes ago." "But why isn't a representative from my foreign intelligence service telling me this?" "You'll be informed once they know more." "The Oxboxians have nuclear weapons?" Alazand pinched the bridge of his nose and nodded. "I believe scientists in the Exorius power plant have successfully processed CNE, plutonium, and a functional nuclear deterrent." "They said they don't possess nuclear weapons. We made an international agreement. How did you gather the information?" "They thought I was a visiting official. Even before my visit, I had my suspicions." "How? Why?" "A member of Dawn Republic's Laboratory for Nuclear Security and Policy sent me disturbing satellite images from the space station." He nodded. "For some stupid reason, that's the only place which receives raw satellite data." "It's not stupid. It was an international agreement that international data be processed on international territory." He stared down at the green carpet. "Did Agent Haru tell you?" "Agent Haru?" "Major Dondor's inside man. He planted AI into the system which receives data from the satellite." "No." "Oh." Okay, this bit shouldn't be here because they talk about that later. Sorry, that's a huge It's not stupid. It was an international agreement. That international data must be processed on international territory. He stared down at the green carpet. Did a mole at Shepherd Station send it to you? No. The Laboratory for Nuclear Security and Policy did, but a mole may have sent it to them. Isleworth's mouth slackened. But we have knowledge of oxboxian mining for exporting overseas. In Exorius, yes. But these images show higher concentrations than expected, as well as uranium mining in Xland Point. Uranium and plutonium? In Xland Point? Dr. Alazan nodded. In the centre of a seismically inactive plate. I discussed matters with your Secret Service and gave chemical detectors to 2 agents. They went to Xland Point? They did, and those detectors they carried essentially sniffed out uranium byproducts. They also confirmed gas centrifuge was being used to enrich the uranium for 1 or more nuclear warheads. Sweat broke out all over the president's body. We made a pact. How dare they? That's not all. I carried my own chemical detector for fissile materials too on your visit to the energy plant in Exorius. That's right. There were some strange and esoteric chemicals in the environment which suggested radiation broke molecular bonds to form them. This is just terrible. What are they planning to do? Wipe us out? Alazan's face turned pallid. We must be creative to sustain peace and security. I'm already prepared to produce more nuclear missiles. We must increase production now. Dondor's agent will keep it well masked. He's working in the satellite's imagery department and has access to the computer which receives the data. Even without the perfect function of his limbs, Alazan clutched his arms to his chest. No, it's better we prevent proliferation. I have a strong inclination it's still early in the program. It will be easier for them to abolish their nuclear program now rather than later when they possess more warheads. Isleworth's breath bottled. So I must meet with President Denver? No. Tell the Mayleedian Interstellar Law Enforcers. They are our enemies. They're probably behind it. I don't think so. I know so. Most of Osbox's House of Commons is ruled by Mayleedian tycoons. I say we go mass producing warheads of our own and aim them over the ice ocean. Professor Alazan moaned. Surely it's better we come to an agreement with Osbox, even if half our government is already Mayleedian. Even if half of its government is already Mayleedian. How can we come to an agreement when we have nothing to defend ourselves? He gave his best scientist unwathering eye contact. You said yourself that Vorta can afford 5 more warheads. We must develop enough weapons to help counter foreign aggression. President Isleworth watched his communist troops training in their military base 20 miles from his presidential palace in Pascata, the capital of Vorta. Sun glared in his eyes, but he still recognized the silhouette that limped towards him. His friend's limp had worsened with age, but he was still a tall man with square shoulders. While not yet old, Major Dondor was no longer the lithe young man who'd risked his life to save Isleworth's 2 decades ago. That act of bravery had upranked Dondor's position of Chief Marshal of a service branch in Western Vorta to Major General of the entire continent, as well as shattering his femur and kneecap. Defending the communist president from an assassination had left Dondor blind in one eye and unable to walk for a year. But the man still carried his weight well, even if one leg was 6 centimetres shorter. His mutilated face carried his war scar with pride too. The president shaded his eyes in attempt to see Dondor's face. Dondor towered over the president by a foot, and his girth must have been 2 times that of the Mayleedian ruler. But he wasn't fat. The major was still strong and fit. President Isleworth pivoted away from the sun to view the brown and scarred face of his best friend. The man beamed like a young child who'd just received a bag of candy. What are you so happy about? The president asked. I have a gift for you. A gift? Would you like to come and see it now? You couldn't bring it in your pocket. Oh no, he chuckled under his breath. It's so big I had to store it in the tank hangar. He howled. Such an enormous gift. Only the best for you. I hope it didn't cost too much. He lowered his voice to a whisper. You know I'm keen to increase uranium processing. Now I know there are more Mayleedians on this continent and warheads across the ocean. This will help you combat the Mayleedians should we find their headquarters. A nuclear bomb could do that. I'm sure this would be safer. Dondor tapped his heel on the floor. Nuclear attacks would surely be the last resort. Take me to this thing. Major Dondor nodded to 4 of his men who surrounded the pair as they ambled out of the courtyard and towards the hangars. More men waited outside Hangar 8 and opened the doors to let them in. Isleworth frowned. It's so big we must open the main doors. You should wish to take the thing out for a ride. Oh, sorry, should you wish to take the thing out for a ride? Please don't tell me you bought me a foreign sports car. Oh, no. As Major General of the Dawn Republic, I conceive we can do something better than that, don't you? Isleworth chuckled as he followed Dondor inside and halted in front of something covered in a blanket. 6 times larger than a tank. Major Dondor communicated with some engineers to unveil the object, and when they pulled the sheet away, Isleworth stepped back in amazement. It resembled a metal giant lying on his back. Isleworth's breath stalled. A robot? Dondor thrust out his chest. Not just a robot, a jet robot with weapons. How to control the thing? Via a drone controller. It doesn't carry troops. We have airplanes for that. Can I fly it? There's something else I have to show you first. Is that okay? We're leaving this thing here just for a few minutes while I escort you to the basement. After soldiers removed a secret panel in the concrete floor and released a hatch, Isleworth followed Dondor down some steps and through a tunnel for 5 minutes before entering an underground hangar. It housed 3 nuclear weapons mounted on missiles, 20 gravity bombs for fighter jets, and 3 transporter erector launchers with integrated tractor units for lugging, elevating, and launching missiles. Isleworth stroked a wheel on one of the TELs. Can I afford these? Yes, Dondor grinned. We can transport them to various locations via our newly made underground tunnels. Sorry, let's just change that to newly constructed. Isleworth rocked on the balls of his feet. Out of the city? All the way to the mountains outside of Pascata. Should I need to launch one of those across the ocean? Would it strike Exorius? Most definitely. Isleworth chuckled. Can that robot up there cart gravity bombs? It can. But what's the point? I have suicide pilots. It has aura shield technology. It's imported from Mayleeda. It is. How many nukes can it cart? 20 tons worth. It's stronger than a war jet. When did these missiles arrive? Just this morning. And the robot? The day before. Isleworth's shoulders quaked with amusement before they froze. Won't opponents detect plutonium fallout? We are far enough underground and have thick steel within the ceiling. I'm still worried about satellite images, but you've got that sorted, haven't you? I have. I already told you about Agent Haru, who has inserted AI into the computer program in the space station's satellite imagery department. I already told you about Agent Haru, who has inserted AI into the computer program in the space station's satellite imagery department. Can you trust this man? Who is this Agent Haru? Remember that elite agent we abducted from the Mayleedians? Sorry, I just had to edit a bit. Remember that elite Mayleedian agent we had? Which one? We had 5. The Jurgen who escaped prison for murdering a high-ranking official. The only one who agreed to side with us. The Jurgen, you say? Yes. Dondor shuffled on his feet and wedged his hands in his trouser pockets. But the images may be sent to more than one location. They're not. Shepherd Station is the only lawful place where the images may be sent. Go to. So what's the point in having such a high-tech underground storage space for hiding the nuclear warheads? Operations can fail. It's just an extra security measure. So what is this double agent going to do? Are you sure you can trust him? The Mayleedians employed him, after all. Major Dondor gave the president unwavering eye contact. I am certain he passed all the lie tests. He hates the Mayleedians and they hate him. Didn't he kill his own wife and the lieutenant general? Yes, he's a fugitive. And they cannot disclose his whereabouts. He has a new identity. Chapter 6. Native Tribe. Urkel. Urkel set her eyes on red sun vision and descended from the peak. She took advantage of a lookout on the way and practiced controlling zooming in and out when viewing armoured vehicles which trailed behind snow scrapers in the valley. She had never seen wheeled transportation before, not even in her futuristic VR games. Those worlds had hovers, maglev suction tubes and crystal pathways in a variety of white sun worlds. All their world building was innovative, like the world the games were imported from. Spacefaring Beluvians transported their VR to the noir plasts in black silver, while bringing food, medicine and other technology to Hidden City in the neighbouring caverns. Exported from the water world, New Belu, the Noirplasts were grateful to their chairman. Only white-skinned Beluvians lived on the water world. They colonised it after leaving the black Beluvians on their rocky planet, Old Belu, decades ago. The white Beluvians had damaged the planet with their intensive agriculture, excessive mining and consumerism, while the black Beluvians lived in harmony with nature. The environmentalist chairman only thought it proper to force all the whites to leave and colonise a neighbouring water world. Apparently, the black Beluvians had reversed much of the damage done to Mother Nature on their rocky world, Old Belu. The rulers of the Noirplasts were all Beluvian. While 2 sisters were white, 3 were black. Many of the Beluvians in Hidden City were descendants of a group of scientists called COS, the Circle of Stars. During the environmental revolution, they had escaped their system in black silver. Later, the scientists on the water world, New Belu, had sent more, and finally the chairman agreed to cooperate with them. He had secret knowledge about the future of planet Arceus based on some kind of oracle. Urkel wasn't sure she believed in telling the future, but she certainly loved being above ground, even with the definite threat of trouble when she returned to the caverns. She focused her eyes until she had a clear view of the tank's wheels. It made sense to her. Having the belt would increase the surface area and disperse the weight. She knew she must keep out of sight of those tanks, though. Noirplasts were educated about the Dawn Republic and the Planet's Galactic Alliance. Urkel understood well that the communist military above ground would kill them or experiment on them if they discovered their existence. The snow was deep in the valley, so she edged her way around the base of Mount Alimazi for 2 miles. Unlike a human, Urkel and other Noirplasts could sense water. The torrent brought a rush of excitement to her ears and nerve endings the nearer she got to the waterfall. Even the particles in the air brought new feelings of delight. VR simulation couldn't compete with reality. The icy torrent brought no suffering to her. Half plant and half human, the temperature had no burden unless below -30 degrees Celsius and above 80. She stretched her hands and fingers, sniggering when the water poured down her arms and chest. With a lightness in her limbs and an overall feeling of weightlessness washing over her, she dived into the white water pool. After swimming, Urkel sprinted through the forest where snow had melted beside the river. She vaulted over moss-covered fallen trees, 3 meters into the air, but Urkel had to find her way to the coast and get through the other entrance to Hidden City. Once there, she'd be forced to face the fury of the Noirplasts. That's why she didn't contact any of them in the oneness of the astral plane. She knew she was a coward, but she didn't like getting told off. Avoiding shame meant that finding the cave and exposing herself to the humans there was her only option. After hours of trekking through pine forest, she felt the urge to uptake water. Stepping into the mud at the river's edge, she attempted to extend her finger and soul roots into the earth, but she couldn't, for the ground was frozen. It would use up more energy for her to metabolize and warm the river water too. Despite having tolerances above the human, threshold, not spectrum, above the human threshold, she was still a biological organism, so needed to convert fuel to energy. Urkel continued on her journey with a parched mouth. She delayed her journey now and then to zoom into the horizon with her genetically modified vision. It had been a long night, and the black ocean, some 10 miles away, shimmered under white stars and 2 thin slices of red moon. Urkel bounced from foot to foot. During her whole life, she had never been able to test her sharpened vision. She'd shorten her journey to hours if she could run across the snow, but Urkel wasn't light and didn't have a snowplow to help her. She understood her orientation when focusing on the journey of the river to the sea. Noirplasts must have been genetically modified to feel their way around a landscape. She even knew another river ran from Mount Alimazi to the southern coast of the Vorta continent. It would take days to get to the ocean following the river. She was so very parched from her physical exertion, so halted in the stream, and guzzled the water as a human would. While it wouldn't nourish her as well as consuming it with minerals through wet soil, the least she could do was drink. Then she continued her way until the rhythm of music crept into the air. As she sneaked nearer, the music made the branches on her head stand up on end. She squatted behind a tree trunk. With her specialised vision, she couldn't see much, so Urkel transformed it into that of a red sun-dwelling human, especially as dawn arrived. The red light of bonfire glowed through the trees and flickered when silhouettes passed in front like planets crossing a star. From the number of voices she estimated, there were 10 in total, but there could be more. It was strange to see these different things, hear these sounds and smell wood smoke. The scent of cooking meat wafted in the breeze. Saliva filled her mouth. It had been time for supper 5 hours ago. She was famished. Urkel had never eaten meat before. Hand-to-mouth food was discouraged in black silver. It smelled good, though. She needed self-control. If she encircled the camp far enough, she could return to the river. She followed the track of a beast. The sound of humans and music decreased the farther she padded until it was silent and the firelight vanished, but the sound of the gurgling river welcomed her back. I'm just going to say here, sorry, but the gurgle of the river welcomed her back. She tried once again to release her roots into the soil. Even the major taproot uncurled from the base of her spine and stretched down towards the mud. It pounded the ground with frustration, trying to enter. Because it was frozen here too, she knelt in the mud to cup her hands once more and slurped the river water into her mouth. She was so desperately thirsty, she left her roots draping from her feet and palms, and her taproot remained extended like a tail. The water tasted odd. She straightened her knees and splayed her fingers and toes, ready to pull her roots back through her limbs and into her spinal column. Her throat constricted. The roots lashed... Her roots lashed the air. Her lungs froze, unable to breathe. Her body thudded onto the frozen ground. She wished desperately to meditate and tell the other Noirplasts about her impending doom, but she couldn't send the astral message as her fingers had uncurled like stiff claws. She couldn't even chant. Urkel awoke, tethered to a tree. Pain funneled up her spine. 3 women in furs squatted around her in the darkness, scanning her body, face and hair branches. They looked weird too. She'd seen all kinds of humans on VR games and movies, but never in real life. These were native to Arceus. Their eyes could see colours within the infrared spectrum, but, unlike Noirplasts, they couldn't see etheric energy lines. I don't need to write that. I've told you that a few times. Delete. One had skin as white as the stars, and the other 2 were each a different shade of brown. Nausea churned her stomach, and she projectile vomited. They pounced backwards a couple of feet like wild monkeys. Unable to wipe the vomit off her lips, Urkel felt grateful none had landed on her body. Annoyed at herself for fixating on something unimportant when her life was in danger, she moaned. She couldn't even send a message to the other Noirplast when her hands were tied up. She needed to form a mudra with her fingers and thumbs at her heart to join her relatives on the astral plane. Even if she could warn them, what would they do when they were forbidden to leave their underground spaceship? Are you a tree? Her muscles weakened. They spoke her language, passed through the generations by the first Beluvians who'd colonized the depths of the Marzi Pass. Oops, sorry. There were many dialects in Vorta, so she was grateful they spoke the same. You know what? I'm going to delete that bit. It just confuses things. No, I'm a tree. She abstained to asking them if trees had faces and hands. They looked too dangerous to fool with. Their eyes went round. She speaks, one said. What are you? She delayed her response, uncertain whether it would be the right one. An invention. A what? I was made. By who? The communists. Urkel lied. If she was lucky, they feared communists as much as the 5 Beluvian sisters did. How did they make you? In their labs. Labs? Places where scientists work. What are scientists? Her eyes bulged before she could control her expression. Didn't these people know anything about the modern world? I can help you. How? I'm an expert hunter. Set me free and I'll catch you all the animals you can get. When the women taunted, their teeth were black and rotten. We ain't ever letting you go, one said. We'll get more riches showing you to other northern tribes. But the communists will come and kill you. Nah, they won't. They don't care about us. But I escaped their tank. They'll be searching for me in these woods. She's lying, one said. Tanks don't come this close. They would have found you. It's impossible to hide over the plain, especially when it's covered in snow and you're as black as coal. As black as your teeth, she thought spitefully. Did you have water from the river? One said. She nodded. That's poisonous from the power station. You're lucky you're still alive. We ain't as stupid as you reckon, said another. We've seen your type before. Feeling dizzy, Urkel's hands trembled. That's right, said another. You're with those aliens. You came with them hundreds of cycles ago. You came from the stars. Her bark skin tingled with discomfort. She squeezed her eyes shut, wondering whether she should be honest. Perhaps they'd untie her if she was. Please, let me go. I must go home. She tried twisting around. My parents will be worried. I'm hungry. You can feast with us. Her stomach gurgled. We won't untie you. We know you've got magic abilities. What do you want from me? Urkel stared into each of the 5 faces, some dark and some white. They were rough, these people. We want to know who you are and where you came from. An underground city in the Marzi Pass. Even if they knew they couldn't gain access. Who runs it? Friends of the people. Communists. I'm actually going to just delete that bit. No, they help the innocents. What innocents? Normal people who suffer because of war. What war? Is that what all the tanks are about? Not just that. She wished to scratch her face. The folk underground help the prisoners of war camps. And you've seen these, have you? No, none of us have. Then who told you? A friend. Her gaze bounced between an increasing number of faces as more joined the interrogation. This friend of yours, a woman asked. This friend of yours a tree, too? A woman asked. No, she's a human, like you. She ain't one of them weird-looking alien types, is she? Urkel feigned confusion. What do you mean? One of them ones with massive black eyes. Urkel said, What? A man brought his face inches away from hers. His breath stank of something disgusting. Well, you're lying to us, ain't ya? I don't know what you're going on about. There's been a few sightings of your kind before. An elderly woman staggered into the semicircle. I saw one myself when I was a wee lass. It was a man. It was the summer. His head branches bore red flowers. This place under the mountain sounds good, the man with stinky breath said. If we go with you, will you let us stay? Will they let us stay? Yes, I think they would. They always let captives in. But we're not captives, the old woman said. But we can pretend to be, the man told the woman. Whichever way Urkel returned, she'd get into trouble. It made more sense to bring this tribe to the cave's entrance rather than begging for forgiveness on the astral plane and wishing to be rescued. Okay, I'll take you there. That's where I wanted to go. We follow the river to the coast, then double back west. We can cut across the plain instead. The old woman wiped her snotty nose with the back of her hand. But the snow's too deep. Urkel grimaced. Oh, I spelt her name wrong, did I? The crone cackled. We have sleighs and huskies. It will be a slow journey, another man said. We don't have floating machines like some of those lucky ones from that place. But food is in abundance there, Urkel said, and it's warm. Perhaps I can sneak in without being seen too. Chapter 7. Gone. Frankie. Frankie slurped sweet black coffee in his front garden, gazing with his right eye at tropical plants, trees and other homes around the square void in the centre. He couldn't imagine how they'd keep Oliot a secret for the rest of time, and anxiety held him in constant tension as he wondered how many... Sorry, I'm just going to make this into another sentence. Anxiety held him in constant tension as he worried how many other freed captives had seen Dave when he came to shoot their loved ones. "Frankie, look at Oliot's new trick!" Little Jimmy opened the front door. "No, Jimmy, don't let him out!" But it was too late. Oliot rocketed so fast out of the gaping door, his rubbery red spikes pressed back. Frankie hopped to his feet and bowed his arms. "Oliot," he said in a warning tone. The sparrow cat's tongue slobbered out of his mouth, and then he leapt over the small picket fence. Frankie's mouth went dry and his heartbeat raced as he legged it out the garden, following the trails the sparrow cat had chosen between pot plants, hidden gardens and cafes. But the creature had disappeared from view. Frankie arrived at a fork in the path. He had to find him, had to tell Zarita the truth. Dave would know what to do. After taking the elevator down to the medical department, Frankie almost ran directly into Zarita. She held out her hands. "I'm sorry, Frankie." He was about to ask what she was sorry for, what she was sorry about, until he saw Dave lumbering between security guards with his eyes fixed on the ground. "Where are you going?" "He's going to the dungeons." A small angry crowd had gathered. "He murdered my brother in broad daylight," a sobbing woman yelled. "He killed many," an angry man's voice boomed. Their words became lost as everyone shouted at once. "Let him rot in the dungeons." An old woman's piercing voice screamed above the chaos. "Death would be too kind." A pain broke out from the centre of Frankie's chest. "He saved your lives." "He killed countless others," a woman hissed. It was hard to see the sympathy in Zarita's gigantic black eyes, but a frown dented her brow and her lips downturned. "I'm sorry, Frankie. The people have spoken, but... Dave was shoved past and tried to reach out to calm the boy. The man studied Frankie's face with concern in his eyes, especially when... Scanning the eye patch the boy wore. "It's okay, Frankie. Build your life here. I was expecting it. I deserve it." "No!" Tears burst out of his eyes as he sobbed. "I love you. You're my big brother." He spun around to face Zarita. "Please, let him go instead of imprisoning him. I'll leave too. We can find a new home in a village up north." "Dave, even live down south where it's warmer." The man shook his oily head. "We're fugitives, lad. It don't work like that. You go back to little Jimmy now. Don't brood about me." As the guards pushed Dave away from Frankie, a woman said, "That boy from Nerthus has gone too. I don't know why. We welcomed him. Maybe it's because he looks so different to the rest of us. He had blue eyes, you know, from planet Nerthus. Hadn't ever seen a Nerthling in real life before. Have you? Had you?" Frankie pivoted on his heel without replying. He trudged back home. The hollowness in his chest felt somehow heavy. Sweat beaded over his face when the elevator arrived at the tropical floor on -1. Little Jimmy hunched on the central rug and started to his feet. His dark brown eyes were full of hope. "Did you find Oliot?" "No." The little boy kicked the floor and burst into tears. "Did he die?" "I'm not sure, but he wouldn't even come when I whistled for him. Dave's gone to the dungeons. They're locking him up for his war crimes." "Well, that just sucks because he rescued us all." "They find it hard to forgive because Dave killed so many before." Frankie squatted and reached out to touch the boy's afro. "I know, but Bogans believe in forgiveness." "Bogans? That's what my mum and dad were. Do you think they're still alive?" Frankie shrugged. "How did you get caught?" "Dad had a cool yacht. I can't remember much. It was such a long time ago. But some bad guys on a boat jumped onto our yacht and tied my parents up. Do you think that weird-looking robot man could help us?" Robot man? The one with the metal hand? That's right, he's gone. Left? Yep. Did he take Ollie or? No, the entrances are high security. There must be heaps of ways for a sparry cat to get out. Think of all the secret tunnels and caves. Frankie's shoulders curled forward as his heartbeat became sluggish, or heaps of ways for a sparry cat to get lost. Frankie? Yeah? Do you mind if I go live with Johnny? He flinched. Did his mum say you can? Jimmy nodded and smiled. Then we can be brothers. There's another boy who lives there too. He's 7. Johnny's brother? I don't think so. He's Georgian, got different colour skin. Oh, okay. Perhaps another orphan. Johnny's mum is real nice and cooks in the communal kitchen. We'll get to eat before everyone else does. If you're sure that's what you want, Jimmy grinned, then puckered his bottom lip. What? You'll be lonely. No, I won't. What about your mum and dad? Will you ever see them again? They died. Dave became my dad. And now he's locked away? Yep. Will you be okay by yourself? Sure. We can still be friends. Hey! His eyebrows bounced up. You can come live with us too. No thanks. Why? I just want my own company. Don't want any sympathy. What does sympathy mean? Feeling sorry for yourself. Don't you feel sorry for me? I feel sorry for many people. There's so much sorrow. But we're free. The little boy's bottom lip quivered. So many died. People who didn't need to die. The living are free. Jimmy sniffed and nodded. You saved them. You and Dave and the robot boy. Frankie sat cross-legged and opened out his arms. Jimmy sat on his lap and sobbed. I want you to be my big brother. I wanted you to be my big brother. I really did, but I want a mummy more. Johnny's mum said I can call her mum. That's great. Frankie rubbed his quaking back. The kid must have witnessed so much murder and torture and known so many who could only hope for a quick death from the torment of grief, hunger and pain. His vision blurred. Frankie knew only too well how bad it was to be starving and sick from weakness. Will you come with me and hand me over to Johnny's mum? Sure. Now? He nodded eagerly. Come on then. Little Jimmy held Frankie's hand and skipped by his side. I'll only live on the east side. Still -1. That's neat, isn't it? We'll be neighbours. Isn't it too hot for you? I like it. We can always cool down in the cabbage fields. True. But can you sleep all right in the tropics? I couldn't the first night. It's better now. Does Johnny's mum have fans in her house? Sure. Okay. He bit the corner off a nail and chewed. Could he trust her? Frankie and Jimmy made their way to Johnny's and stepped through an entrance between the small white picket fence. A plump Mayleedian woman greeted them with a smile, displaying a gap between her 2 front teeth. She had ginormous breasts and round hips, bursting to escape from her tightly wrapped batik sarong. Her voice came out deep like a man's as she held out her arms and snuggled Jimmy. Frankie, you're the assassin's son. I've heard so much about you. He sighed with exaggeration. Oh, I'm not his son. 2 little boys poked their heads out from around her chubby brown legs. One was Georgian and the other a Mayleedian with an afro like a halo of smoke. But he adopted you, she said. I guess he kind of did. You come move in with me, okay? No thanks, I'm just dropping Jimmy off. She hitched a hand on her hip and frowned, releasing Jimmy's from her clutch. The little boy giggled and ran into the house. Just 'cause I'm Mayleedian don't mean a boy like you ain't welcome. Like me? A ghost. Ghost? Yeah, you know, a Mayleedian. We ain't racist like that. Right. She held her hands out for an embrace. The tops of her arms were the same width as both of Frankie's thighs. I know you're lonely. It's not like that. A friend of mine told us about that killer getting locked away, and I'm sorry. I don't agree with it at all. You don't? No. I thought everyone hated him. Only those speaking up do. Why isn't anyone protesting for his freedom then? It's not our business going against the 5 sisters, but us Bogans believe in forgiveness. He's repented his sins by saving you folk. She waggled her outstretched hands in a come here gesture. He took a deep breath and held it in, but the words exploded out, even with the effort. Look, lady, I didn't come here for a place to live or for sympathy. I came here to hand Jimmy over. He twisted away and ran. As Frankie approached his neighbourhood, he saw a crowd outside his house. Many were captives he'd rescued. He tried to bypass them so he could weep in privacy, but an old woman gripped his wrist. Hey, where's your friend gone? He resented the fact that these people couldn't forgive Dave and be grateful. In prison, no thanks to you. Not the executioner, friend boy, a hairy Mayleedian said in a deep voice. That blue-eyed sax, that cyborg spy. He's gone, but we need his help. Frankie had to get home and grieve about losing Olio and Dave and Mum and Dad. Why? Because if he works for them Mayleedians, he can help us get back to where we belong. He's long gone. Can't you go get him to come back? Can't you go get him to come back? The old hag tugged on his wrist. Frankie's chest tightened. Get off me. The guy who'd confided in him earlier said, he went hours ago. How about if we tell you where that sparry cat of yours has gone? The old woman asked. Where is he? We'll only tell ya if you find that sax and beg him to help us find passage to Osbox. The man with the white beard said, Me wife, she needs me. Well, he rubbed his hairy cheek, I need her, and me baby gal. Frankie glanced at the others. It's freezing out there, I'd die of cold. I'll provide you with furs and skins, a girl said. I work in the stock rooms. But no one's allowed out. Frankie thought about that place with those weird plant creatures. You know a place, don't you, lad? The old woman grabbed his hand and peered at his palm. There's another way out. An insect-eyed sister showed you. I can read the lines. She cupped her hand to whisper in his ear. Oops, sorry, just editing a bit there. If you carry your sparry cat through there, you'll find your big brother. He pulled away and clenched his teeth. I don't have a big brother. You know who I'm going on about. Dave, he clutched his belly. Okay, I'll do it, but I'll need provisions, and so will my sparry cat. Although he and Olio had survived many freezing winters together, they knew where to collect firewood from in the slums under Exorius Sky City. He was dirt poor, but part of the slum community, where everyone helped each other. Here, he had no one. I can make a coat for your sparry cat, the girl said. My ma was a seamstress and taught me how to use the loom and sewing machine. That's why I volunteered to work in the clothes stores. The old witch grabbed his hand again and peered at his palm. I don't know which route you'll choose once you reach the valley, but I know you'll find your brother. Can I survive? If you're wise, you will. It's better than being lonely and sad here, the bearded Mayleedian man said. That's easy for you to say. His white face turned red. No, it's not. Take me with you. I'll prefer to die trying to return to my wife and daughter than live a life of lonely luxury, unable to help. We have a chance to make things better. We have a chance to return these people to their families. An uncontrollable shiver swept through Frankie. Ice Ocean's perilous. But them Mayleedians have good boats, I'm sure of it. You're prepared to come with me? He nodded. I know the ways of the wild. I was a forest warden back in my time. Could Frankie let this stranger see the secret Zarita and the other four sisters kept from Hidden City? You really know where my sparry cat is? The man nodded. I'll show you now. He's in a cage, but I know the hunter. I can free him before he's killed, skinned and sold as Jurgen medicine. Take me to him. I'll find the sack Cyborg and Dave. I'll tell them to help the migrants get home. The man bellowed, My name's Ogwa, and I'm Frankie. Frankie and Ogwa stuffed the clothes which the seamstress donated to them into an enormous sack with the yapping and licking Olio on top. Shh, Frankie said to the excited sparry cat before kissing him on the nose. If it wasn't for the group urging him to find Finley, Olio would have become dead meat so his claws and ruff could be grounded for Jurgen medicine. It didn't ease Frankie. We'll be questioned. The guards won't let us enter the sisters' floor. Let's see what we can do. They stalked along paths which meandered around cacti and headed for the lift. Once inside, they took it to -12. Ogwa exited while Frankie remained inside, holding the doors ajar with his foot. He pressed a button and an operator answered his call. I have to see Zarita. I have important information to share with her. After a minute, the operator replied, She grants you access. He had an empty feeling in the pit of his stomach. Security guards might see Ogwa in live camera footage. He nodded at the large man and they descended. The Artheuses crossed together. When the doors opened, Zarita stood there with hands on her hips. "Who is he?" But before she could continue, Ogwa grabbed her head. There was a deafening crack. "No!" Frankie's breaths rasped. "Shut up, fool. It was the only way. Now show me the way to that place Cindy mentioned." "Cindy?" "The fortune teller." He gasped for air as the sound of his heartbeat threshed in his ears. "I can't trust you." "I don't care. I'll kill you next if you don't take me there. Now let's go." "Did you kill her?" "Look at her." He chortled. "What do you think?" Frankie hadn't seen a dead Beluvian before, but she wasn't moving. Her pure black eyes still seemed to stare into nothingness. Frankie's vision blurred. She'd been his friend. "What are you, a man or a girl? Now show me the exit before I kill you, and don't play the hero. I'll make my way back up to kill everyone else if you don't help me." Ogwa hauled her body over his shoulder and dumped it in the shadows after half an hour's hike into the belly of Mount Alimazi. They finally arrived at the glass spaceship which housed the weird creatures. "Holy Father, what is this place?" Ogwa pressed his nose flat against the glass and peered down at the plant people. "I don't know," Frankie lied. "Zarita told me to ignore them." "But what are they?" "I don't know. Do you want to get out or not? Zarita's armed guards will be searching for us." "What in God's name?" He whistled. "What are those colourful lights they're floating inside?" "I can only guess they're some kind of VR, but that technology is expensive. How can they afford it?" "Look, we'd better go." The killer followed Frankie to the hatch. Frankie had memorised the code Zarita used, with a pain at the back of his... I use that too much. Delete that. Show of fear. He climbed the ladder and typed it in. He'd never meant to get her killed. Olio whined in the sack when Ogwa hauled it up the ladder. When they ascended the snowy ledge, he let the hatch shut behind them. With a roaring in his ears, Frankie took deep breaths to calm his dark emotions. "We'd better put those furs on." Ogwa handed the bundle to Frankie. After Frankie dressed himself and Olio, Ogwa offered him his hand. Frankie didn't accept it. "You didn't have to kill her." "Yes, I did." "Couldn't you have just made her unconscious instead?" "No, she was the barrier to our escape. It had to be done." Olio yapped at Frankie's feet, so the teenager picked him up. "He's hungry." "Here." The man handed Frankie a chicken drumstick. Why did Frankie always attract killers? As he let Olio chew the drumstick, he decided he could never befriend this man. Chapter 8. Shepherd Station. Oshun. The disguised pilot zoomed away from the spaceship, then turned to face... I think we've missed... Okay. The disguised pilot zoomed away from the spaceship, then turned to face Oshun. "What's been your dream since you were little?" Oshun thought about her lifelong desire to cure her mother of her Creutzfeldt's Jakob disease, but he probably meant her pretend dream, to become an astronaut. "Are you stoked to be going to the Shepherd Station?" "Yes, at least that's what I'll tell everyone." "Good. Does such a person really exist?" "Huh? Does Professor Esteve really have a daughter called Henrietta?" "No, but the president could find out. He's too busy with other affairs." "But what about those in the space station?" "They won't have evidence I came to space." "They will. Double agents posing as Dawn Republic employees have just sent a group of teenagers into orbit and believe you are on that rocket." "But why? Are the teenagers to join us at the space station?" "Yes." "Why teenagers?" "To monitor the physiology of aging and adaptation to microgravity in space." "I'm taking growth inhibitors. Will my cyborg limbs cope with growth under microgravity?" We had fake gravity on our spaceships." "That wasn't fake gravity, it was centrifugal force created by the spinning motion." "Whatever, but will they cope?" "I believe your cyborg apparels can cope with the growth induced by micro..." "How tall are you?" 5 feet. "You won't grow more than a couple of inches." Her mouth went dry. "That's a lot. Surely it would take a few months for me to gain 2 inches in microgravity." "No, only a few days as your spinal column decompresses." Her gaze flitted around the craft. "The doctor said my cyborg limbs aren't meant for growth." He shrugged. "Surely a couple of inches will be all right." "Can you contact the captain and find out?" They've already left. You won't be seeing them again. But what about when my growth inhibitors run out? Will I live on the space station forever? You had the opportunity to leave. I don't know what Admiral Marsh plans for you. Isn't there any way I can prevent this growth? It could be painful. Let's just wait and see. You'll be coming along too? No, he squinted at the radar and pointed at a blinking red spot. I see the capsule containing the 3 teenagers. Prepare yourself for a rapid deceleration as I blast the forward thrusters. Am I going to join them? No, they're coming in here. But they'll know I didn't come with them. Don't overburden yourself. They're all Mayleedian agents. The other fake Henrietta will return to an Arthian safe house while she removes her disguise. Clank. As the spacecraft rattled, Oshun blinked rapidly. A hissing sound indicated the depressurization of the airlock. After 10 minutes, the inner door to the chamber opened, allowing 3 space cadets to enter. They wore orange overalls and carried their astronaut suits. 2 teenage girls and 1 teenage boy were all Renidians, though the taller of the girls, with cornrows, may have been mixed race because her irises were yellow and skin a shade of caramel. Her cornrows reminded Oshun of her own hair before Mum died. Oshun's android used to weave them for her. He plaited them so tightly against her skull they would hurt for the first day or 2, but as her hair grew, they loosened. When they grew out, he redid them again. Neither Oshun nor Kelly knew how to weave hair, so she grew dreadlocks instead. I know you. Oshun's safety harness disengaged. She let out spontaneous laughter and stood. Oshun Musa. The rounded girl with skin much darker than hers patted her back. I remember sitting opposite you in the virtual reality circle. Oshun's knees buckled. I never thought I'd be so happy to see you guys again. Did you feel left out being the only child? The young man with a shaved head said. I wasn't treated well, if that's what you mean. Well, we'll treat you good, said the other girl. I know how mean kids can be, especially teenagers. Oshun shrugged. So you know your story? The boy asked, but before Oshun could respond, he said, Is there somewhere I can sit? Excuse my manners. The pilot agent pulled down seats which were integrated into the sides of the cockpit. Can I take these gloves off now? The boy asked. Are your hands metal? The pilot asked. Of course, that's why I'm wearing them. No, keep them on all the time, even when I'm taking a dump. Dumps and showers are okay as long as they're done in private. What if I get lucky? No one can catch sight of your cyborg apparels. The pilot. Sorry, it says Paulette here. It's in capitals. Sorry. The pilot narrowed his eyes. That goes for all of you. Oshun's muscles cramped when she remembered the space slug's assault had been intentional. How old are you? The boy raised an eyebrow at her, like 10 or something. She felt overheated. This was why she enjoyed not being around the older Marines. 12. She hated him instantly. She had suffered enough since Mum died. The bullying felt like a twist of the knife. She would be a child far longer than these teenage recruits realised. You're almost a teenager, the short and friendly girl said. Anyway, my name's Janine. I was born in Enderland before I went to military training in Durbar. I thought so, Oshun said. You sound Enderlish. Where are you from? Durbar, Oshun said. Before Janine could respond, the annoying boy said, I'm Matthew. I'm from Durbar too. Oshun's chest heaved. What part? Sahalt. I'm from south of there. Cracker. No way. The famous Durbar football team, Agera, is from there. I don't follow football. Shame. We would have had something to share. We already have plenty to talk about, the mixed-race girl with cornrows and yellow eyes said. We can't discuss football on the space station. They don't play football on Arceus. She cleared her throat. I won't tell you my true name, Oshun, because we have to pretend to be other people. Her voice rose a pitch at the word people as she glared at Matthew and Janine. Sorry, Commander Katie, Matthew said. Katie growled. Throw that name away. She pointed at her name tag. My name is Ella Airy. You don't have to memorize that along with your own story. All our fabricated selves have just met for the first time, so we'll have lots of questions to ask as we get to know our fake selves. I'm not sure there's much point in that, Janine said. We won't be working or living together. Don't forget what Admiral Marsh said. Sure, Katie Katie stood and shook her finger at Matthew. I'm not going to be your commander there. You want to stay alive? Matthew's skin was too dark to see a flush, but Oshun couldn't help notice his nervous smile. Commander Katie eyed the pilot as she pulled out a small device from her pocket. I can't bring this with me. You'll have to hand it to Admiral Marsh when you return to Artheus Terra. She told me to let Oshun watch this. An airsphere popped open in the middle of the chamber, hovering a foot above the floor and stretching out a meter. Inside, Admiral Marsh appeared. It's just a recording, Katie, but now Ella, fiddled with the remote and the Admiral spoke. Hello, Oshun Musa. We are proud of your determination to complete your mission despite having to medicate on growth inhibitors. I hope your medication is safely tucked away. You will not reveal your true identity to the astronauts who carry out scientific experiments on the space station until they speak privately with you. Elsewise, tell them that your name is Henrietta. I already know all of this, Oshun blurted. Katie paused the video and raised an eyebrow. She does, the pilot agreed. What about the scientists you'll be working with? Oshun shook her head. You know all about yourself and your father? I tested her. She does. The pilot slipped off his skull cap and rubbed his white hair. Katie pressed the fast forward and found the right part of the Admiral's speech. Professor Sissia will help you. She works for the Department of Defense. For the communists or capitalists? Oshun asked. Katie pressed the pause button. The pilot said neither. She works for the Mayleedian Interstellar Military. She's educated in nuclear chemistry and plant microbiology. You will be her research assistant and work on some very promising developments. There are other scientists in her team whom no one on the space station knows about. Don't feel alarmed when you meet them. Matthew gaped. I want to meet her already. Katie rolled her eyes. Those two scientists are not from planet Artheus. The pilot gestured for Katie to continue the video. Admiral Marsh continued her speech. Ooh. That says continue twice. To play the video. Admiral Marsh continued her speech. Professor Sissia will fill you in on the details. It's unlikely you'll see Agents Matthew, Janine and Katie again in Shepherd Station. They'll be assigned to separate work in different departments. The Shepherd Station is 2 miles in circumference and shaped like a wheel with 8 spokes. Despite being this shape, there's no centrifugal force and you will live in microgravity. Janine giggled. I can't wait to float around. Katie tutted and shook her head. As you may realise, the space station is international, despite political differences. None of you are supposed to know one another. The reason you three are chosen is you're all the best gamers. That's the reason you have telepathy chips in your brains. Oshun, yours was inactivated while you gamed and studied on the spaceship, but a computer programmer has mobilised it, and your direct line of contact will be Commander Finley Webber, who also has a telepathy device. A thick lump formed in Oshun's throat. She had fond memories of Finley. He stuck up for her when she was being bullied, and he went out of his way to discover the truth about her mother, if only she could tell him about the space slug assault. Direct communication between the 4 of you will be inaccessible, Admiral Marsh continued. You'll each be working for distinct divisions within the Mayleedian Secret Service. Focus all of your attention on your missions at hand. That's imperative. Commander Katie, Agent Janine, and Agent Matthew already know their stories. Over and out. Matthew scoffed. So we can't even chat about stuff. We're not into football, Janine shrugged. Screw football. I hope to get to work with a sexy girl. They'll all be older than you are, Janine giggled. Sure, he shrugged. Anyone below 30 will do. You're gross, Katie said. While the 3 teenagers argued about Matthew's urge to copulate, Oshun tried to remember all the details of her fabricated life as a rich scientist's daughter. Her heart skipped a beat. Through the view screen, the International Space Station came into sight. They were still far, or at least she thought they were. The space station was monumental. Unlike the space station orbiting planet Nerthus, this was a gigantic circle of pressurized modules. What Admiral Marsh had named the spokes of a wheel were columns of solar panels radiating from within the ring. It seemed hard to believe planetary warfare existed in the world below. Here, scientists worked together from both sides of the ocean in harmony. She glanced at the others to see what they thought. Like her, they silently gaped at their new home. Oshun's stomach churned with nausea when the space shuttle attached to the docking bay. The pilot stood. Ready? Oshun, Katie, Matthew, Janine, and the pilot entered the airlock. And when the second door opened, they floated into a chamber. Whoa! Matthew floated in mid-air like the others. It's infrared, Janine said. Have your eyes adjusted, Henrietta? Katie asked. Sure, Oshun had been in plenty of infrared rooms on the spaceship and understood how she had to yawn to switch her eyesight to the low end of the spectrum. Renidian's ancestors originated from the Red Sun world, as did Menidians. Oshun's stomach felt queasy as she grabbed a rail on the wall. 3 people levitated inside a module further down the chain, but there wasn't enough space for them to enter and greet the juveniles. Although Oshun was familiar with Jurgens and Menidians, she had never come across a purple-skinned Fennec before. She knew of them and understood their ancestors originated from a fertile moon which orbited a gas giant in a white sun system. The female Fennec was slim and long, and she wore a metal strip of metallic across her eyes. She used the rails on the sides to push herself towards them. Her skin was coloured amethyst, and she was beautiful. Welcome. My name's Latmany. Her long black ponytail extended above her head, and she jabbed a thumb over her shoulder. My colleagues are Jessica and Keith. She tapped on the side of her eye shield so her indigo eyes became superimposed on the surface. Oshun and the other newcomers smiled awkwardly and waved at her and the Menidian and Jurgen. Latmany broke the tension and floated nearer. Oshun wasn't sure if the image of her eyes on top of her eye shields was more unnerving than not seeing them at all. She didn't know how well Fennecs aged either, but Latmany appeared to be in her late 20s. The woman's cheeks dimpled when she skimmed their faces with her amethyst gaze. Excuse my glasses, but I just can't see a damn thing in this low light without them. The Space Marines chuckled. Have you experienced zero gravity? Ooh, this should be microgravity, because I've made it microgravity. Have you experienced microgravity before? Oshun felt her face tightening. Is she testing us already? We were trained in zero gravity simulators, Matthew said. Dope. Latmany floated backwards into the chamber she had just left. I'd say only 4 of us can fit in a module at a time, but Jessica and Keith can swing on back while I escort you to your departments. Who is Astrid? Sechiel. Me. Janine's voice came out high-pitched. You'll be working in media research and communication on the other side of Shepherd Station. Janine's face dropped. That's a long way to go. Did you see the connecting tubes with solar panels? Yeah. There's transportation through them. Will I need to wear a special spacesuit? Latmany smiled and shook her head. Someone will greet you when we arrive at the transportation module. He or she will escort you to the other sides of the donut. Donut? Matthew said. That's what we call the Shepherd Station's outer ring. We call the cross pieces the booms. Each is numbered. It's unlikely you will use one. Only Astrid will to arrive at her destination. Will I get to go that way too? I'm not sure. Oh, sorry. Will I go back that way too? I'm not sure. Let's take things as they come. There are docking bays all around the donut, but it was easier to greet you all in person. Elon will work with me, cleaning, checking equipment, maintaining and repairing or replacing broken equipment. So Katie's called Ella, Matthew's called Elon, and Janine is called Astrid, Oshun thought. We live and work here? Matthew asked. Yep. He whistled. Nice. Then his face dropped. But Shepherd Station's colossal. We'll have too much to work on. She whooped. We're only assigned to a small section of the space station. I heard you're good at electrical design and engineering. I'm studying it. That will be enough. I guess that means I'll be working fairly close to you and Matthew. I guess that means I'll be working fairly close to you and Matthew, Oshun said. Latmany's lips creased when her mouth formed a small O shape. I wouldn't say that. You'll need to swing through at least 20 modules. Her gaze bounced between Oshun and Katie. Feeling up for it? I guess so. How about me? Katie asked. Sorry, Ella, the pilot said to Katie. Ella? Sorry, this is wrong. Money. Sorry, Lapmany, the pilot said. Oh no, sorry. Not Weller. Ella. Sorry, Ella, the pilot said to Katie. Can I interrupt? I'll be heading back to terra firma now. You sure? Lapmany said. You only just got here. I'm on a time frame. He wheeled around to face the airlock. Well, thanks for bringing them. The Mayleedian Keith yelled from the back end of the module, which attached to theirs. After the airlock fastened, Lapmany floated to their module again. You can see how cramped it is in here. Usually only 3 are allowed in a module at a time, but I'll make the exception now. She rotated to face Katie. You're Ella, right? Katie nodded. You're assigned to animal biology. I'll escort you there. It's a long trip, longer than Henrietta's. Won't I be taking a boom? Well, you could, in theory. The journey won't be direct, and you could be waiting in the central station for a while. Your department is an eighth of the way around the donut. Feeling strong? Katie smiled, but her yellow eyes narrowed. Sure. She pointed at the Mayleedian man in the other module. Keith will take care of you, Elon, while I'm gone. A vibration outside the airlock indicated the space shuttle was leaving. Oshun's smile froze in place. Trapped. What if someone discovered her supposed father didn't have a daughter at all?